Gate of the fantasy football season, and here's a few running backs I would start this week. The first guy, James Robinson of the Jacksonville Jaguars. So Robinson, over the last few weeks, he's really picked up his production here for fantasy owners and the Jaguars. He got off to a slow start the first couple weeks of the season, but now he's been a great running back here for this Jacksonville Jaguar team. The last couple games for him, Week 5 versus Tennessee, 18 rushes, 149 yards, and a touchdown, and one catch for -2 yards. In Week 6 versus Miami, 73 rushing yards, a touchdown, 3 catches for 28 yards. So he had the bye last week, and here in Week 8, he's got a good matchup on paper at the Seattle Seahawks that give up the second most fantasy points to running backs. We just saw Alvin Kamara have a huge fantasy day and shred that defense up. So I think James Robinson, obviously, he's not the running back caliber of an Alvin Kamara, but I think once again this week here, he'll get anywhere from 15 to 20 fantasy points, and he's definitely a guy to start this week. The next running back is Joe Mixon of the Cincinnati Bengals. So Joe Mixon, in my opinion, he's not 100%, and I've spoken about this a couple times throughout the weeks here with Joe Mixon, but right now, this week, you got to put him in your lineup. A lot of bye weeks piling up as the weeks go on here. And last week, I know it was in garbage time. Towards the end of the game, he ran one in to the end zone to salvage his fantasy day with 12 fantasy points. But Joe Mixon this week has a great matchup at the New York Jets that give up the most fantasy points to running backs. We saw Damian Harris go over 100 yards last week. And even in not 100% of a full workload here, I think Joe Mixon once again could have a good game. And it wouldn't surprise me to see him get 80 or 90 total yards in this one and find the end zone. I like a lot of Cincinnati Bengal players this week because this Jet defense just can't stop anybody. The next running back is Khalil Herbert of the Chicago Bears. So Herbert, he's the man over there, in my opinion, now in the backfield for Chicago. Damian Williams, that 1 week out, definitely hurt him. And Herbert's taken over the role, and he's looked great in the last 3 games here. Week 5 of Vegas, 18 carries, 75 yards. Week 6 versus Green Bay, 19 carries, 97 yards, a touchdown. Added 2 catches for 15 yards. And last week, he was back in the lineup, 18 carries, 100 yards. And he added 5 catches for 33 yards. So this week, he's got a good matchup versus the San Francisco 49ers. And right here, this bad team, obviously Justin Fields, he's had a horrible season so far where he can't really stretch the field and get it down the field. So right here, this bad team, they're going to run the ball a lot. Khalil Herbert's a physical back, and he's even showing some receiving out of the backfield, which is a bonus as well for him. So right now, Damian Williams is the change of pace back and just going to be in there to give Herbert a breather. But in my opinion, Herbert, he's going to be almost the every down back here. He looks good. And this bad team, I know they were only 3-4 in the season, but I don't think they're going anywhere this year. So they're going to play more of the younger guys. So right here, Khalil Herbert is a start this week. The next running back's Chuba Hubbard of the Carolina Panthers. So Hubbard, he's been pretty decent in my opinion, filling in for Christian McCaffrey over the last 4 or 5 weeks here. So the last couple games for Hubbard, Week 5 versus Philly, 24 carries, 101 yards, 5 catches, 33 yards. Week 6 versus Minnesota, another decent game. 16 carries, 61 yards, a touchdown, and a catch for 4 yards. And Week 7 at the Giants, 12 carries, 28 yards, but adding 4 catches for 28 yards. So last week was a tough game for Sam Darnold and this Panther offense, and they just couldn't get anything going. But this week in a division matchup at the Atlanta Falcons, obviously an indoor game as well here. I think Hubbard, he's going to reach double-digit fantasy points. He's going to get more than 13 carries in this ball game as well, I think, where this game's going to be more competitive than it was last week with the Giants. And I think Hubbard is a solid fantasy option. He's still going to be the starter for who knows how long McCaffrey's going to be out for. And this week with a matchup at Atlanta that gives up the 7th most fantasy points to running backs, he's definitely a running back I want to put in my lineup this week. And the 5th and final running back I would start this week, Darrell Williams of the Kansas City Chiefs. Of the Chiefs, it was a crazy game, in my opinion, that they got blown out from the get-go 27-3, losing to the Tennessee Titans. And obviously they had to abandon the running game, and they just had nothing going. Patrick Mahomes couldn't get the ball down the field. He turned the ball over 3 times in that game, and Darrell Williams barely got any touches, only 8 touches total in that one. 5 carries, 20 yards, and 3 catches for 30 yards. But this week on Monday Night Football, it's a great matchup versus the New York Giants. that give up the 12th most fantasy points to running backs. And this Chief team, they've been embarrassed after that embarrassing lose, and they're going to come out here with a huge ball game, in my opinion. And in my opinion, they got to establish the run, because this Chief team, they really haven't established the run in a long time here. I know it's great seeing Mahomes throwing the ball 80 yards in the air, stretching it down the field to Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce. But this team, they got to get back to the basics, in my opinion. Run the football, which Andy Reid used to love doing with the Philadelphia Eagles and the first few seasons with the Chiefs. So right here, I think Darrell Williams, he should get 15 to 20 touches in this game. I don't see the Giants getting off to a big lead where they got to abandon the run. And right here, I think the Chiefs just got to build this game around the run and open up that play action and deep ball throwing. So I think Williams in this one has 15 to 20 fantasy points, and he's a running back I'm confident in starting this week. So that's a few running backs I would start in week 8 of the fantasy football season.